Okay, my background, which led to my being where I am now, began with growing up in a very small town where nobody went to college. So when I decided to go to college, I didn't know what that meant.
I grew up in a family that was where education was highly valued, and I developed an early interest in mathematics. So in high school, my teacher said, "What are you doing here in high school?" And I said, "Trying to finish high school." And he said, "Why don't you move on?" And so I applied early, and I got accepted to MIT, and I studied mathematics.
I had never known anybody that went to college, but I had heard about chemical engineering being a major, so I enrolled in chemical engineering.
I was very interested in risk, in decision making, and how those determined patterns of human behavior.
And I was going to be an engineer when I grew up, not knowing what that meant. And after 4 years of college, I had majored in every kind of engineering they offered, and done well in all of them, and hated all of them.
I continued my career doing that sort of thing, applied mathematics, and then at some point I wanted to go broader. I wanted to become really a thought leader.
Being very quick-witted, I finally figured out, I don't think engineering's right for me. So I was in Pittsburgh at this Westinghouse job, and I noticed they were giving a one-year MBA, and I didn't know what an MBA was at the time, but in 1 year I could be something that wasn't an engineer, so I applied. They gave me a fellowship, and 12 months later I was an MBA.
I went back to school, I came out west, and I studied more mathematics, engineering, economics, psychology, statistics, and finance. And again, still maintaining this interest in how humans and systems interact with each other.
But there was a pivotal event in the first semester there. I was taking a course in accounting, and I quickly learned that I hated accounting too. But with the first test, the professor called my name and walked to the back of the room where I sat working crossword puzzles, and he said, "Good work, Frank." I got the highest grade out of 120.
So my research was in finance. My interests that I had from an early age when I was a boy are pretty much the same interests that I have today.
So he befriended me and tried to give me some career counseling, which I certainly needed. He told me, he said, "Is there anything you're interested in?" I said, "Well, I'm halfway through an economics course, first economics course I ever had. That's kind of cool." He said, "Well, why don't you apply to Stanford in the PhD program in economics?" I applied as he told me to. They accepted me and gave me a fellowship, and the next thing I'm sitting in the back row at Stanford.
If you think about any engineering problem, it's got to be adapted to solve a human problem, whether it's a bridge, a building, an airplane, a spaceship. But the same applies to financial systems as it applies to telecommunication systems, and that's what I was doing.
The key element for my success in economics at Stanford was my mathematics background from studying engineering at Notre Dame and Cornell. In engineering, you solve problems, and basically they're usually heavily dependent on a mathematical solution. I love the mathematics of problem solving.
When I was a child, I was interested in mathematics, in puzzles, and observing patterns. You know, if we look at the trees outside here, they're following a certain pattern. They're not randomly placed. And when you move on to behavioral issues where humans are interacting, trying to make their lives better, it gets even more interesting and more complex. So that's what really fascinated me about these kinds of problems. I don't expect that every client to have the same passion or interest I have in finance and mathematics and investments and problem solving. But hopefully I can show the passion I have for it, and that might be interesting to them. That might be an incentive for them to spend more time, to learn more about it, because after all, the stakes are very high.